Podcaster Joe Rogan has said multiple times that he has no interest in interviewing former President Donald Trump. But Trump's team is not giving up. According to multiple reports, the GOP frontrunner still yearning to be on Rogan's podcast, and per the Daily Beast, which first reported the story, Roger Stone has apparently offered to go up against Rogan in a cage-style matchup to get Trump on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Meanwhile, a report in the New York Times exposed how a bizarre pro-Ron DeSantis video in which he has lasers coming out of his eyes while depicting Trump as too friendly with the LGBTQ community was actually produced internally by a DeSantis aide who then passed it off to a supporter to post to make it look like it was crafted independently. Moreover, if DeSantis was hoping to score some points for a stint as a Guantanamo Bay lawyer, he might not want to hold his breath. Showtime pulled a Vice documentary showcasing DeSantis' tenure at Gitmo. According to Semaphore, which first reported the story, the network shelved the DeSantis-centered episode for fear of potential backlash. Vice is said to be looking for a new home for the show. So it sounds to me that there was some stuff that was pretty damning for DeSantis in this documentary. And DeSantis did say, or his campaign rather, said that they need to be more of a lean, mean campaign machine. And I don't know if that means, pulling some strings with folks at Paramount, maybe some high-level donors to DeSantis that really like his candidacy, know some guys at Paramount. I don't know how you can have an episode pulled like that. Well, maybe they after it's produced.
Maybe they had issues with the journalistic credibility of what Vice is doing. I mean, Vice is obviously a very extremely progressive-leaning news organization. I believe it's also a bankrupt news organization. But I can't judge the quality of this documentary without seeing it. Sounds like maybe they feared backlash from conservatives or DeSantis people who are very active on social media, which speaks to the earlier story we just mentioned, that some of these very weird is the only way to describe them, pro-DeSantis videos that have been tweeted from the DeSantis War Room Twitter account. Yeah. It sounds like they were made internally by some staffer who then passed them off to someone else so that it looked like it was organic, yeah. They're real weird videos. They're very online. I don't know. They're very like incel, for lack of a better word.
It's giving. We watched a bunch of Gen Z TikTok hype videos.
Yeah. Oh, they're like Gen Z.
We fed them into an AI and made it come up with its own for the DeSantis campaign. Yeah. These fan cam type videos are very common on TikTok, and they're kind of ironic. It's kind of a joke. But when DeSantis does it, it's just like cringe. It's very obvious that it was someone who's not a part of that community who's trying to copy what they do to be cool on the internet. It's very like guy with a skateboard, like, hey, fellow kids, what's up? I do like your take on the Vice situation. That Vice is like, we have this, pretty interesting documentary about DeSantis that they're not letting us put out. And you're like, you sound broke. Like, we're not listening.
I've not been over the moon with some of their journalistic choices.
I can understand.
Now, what do you make about Joe Rogan? Yes. This is a pretty consistent principle he's had. I remember him saying this before. He said it on his show. The Trump people are just desperate to get Trump on. He said he has no interest in helping Trump. I think Trump and Trump's people probably understand that an interview on a Joe Rogan show would probably be good for them because Joe Rogan's audience is massive. So much more massive than anything you can find on cable news, there's no way to reach this many people at once. Joe Rogan has an audience that I think is very ideologically mixed, but skeptical of mainstream narratives, very critical because of Joe Rogan of kind of the establishment Democratic Party. So that maybe some of them, go in a left direction, some of them go in a right direction, some of them go in an independent direction, but it's people, it's winnable, gettable people for someone iconoclastic like Donald Trump. So of course he wants to be on it. But Joe Rogan said he was a Bernie supporter last time around, maybe last two times around, and has just steadfastly refused to do anything to help Trump. Which I don't know. I mean, obviously it's his show. He can do whatever he wants, but it's not. It wouldn't necessarily be helping. If you have Trump on and ask him really tough questions and hold his feet to the fire and eviscerate him the way you would, someone someone peddling vaccines or something, then it could be bad for him. But I don't know if he wants to do that.
Yeah, right, because some of his base might like Trump, and not having him on might
the
be
base, they're going to like
easier.
Rogan more than Trump, I think.
Maybe.
I don't know what he wants to do.
That might put a lot of people between a rock and a hard place. Those are two, pretty idolized guys by many guys. I think it's funny to imagine the Trump camp, especially Trump. Like, please get me on the Joe Rogan show. Tell him I said please. I don't say please a lot. And I can just see this going down.
Well, that's probably what's going on,
Yeah, I really want to go on the show. But Joe Rogan did a stand-up where he talked about the transition between the Obama presidency to the Trump presidency. And what he said was really interesting. I don't watch the Joe Rogan show, but after watching the stand-up, I felt like I understood, his political mindset a bit more. And he basically said, Obama was this really safe guy, but didn't get a lot done, still didn't fix the problems we have in this country. And he's like, we're just in a relationship with like a really, steady, normal person. And he says, this is a show for adults, but he says now America's dating a hooker. Like, it's just, we're getting drunk all the time. We're having fun. And just the transition between presidents that we have. We're like, well, this thing didn't work, so let's try the exact opposite of that. So I don't think he has particularly, high thoughts of Trump. He doesn't really think highly of Donald Trump, or have high thoughts of him and have him on the podcast, where I know that they talk about drugs and do drugs a lot and talk. But I think it's maybe a good move for him to just not have him on. I think he had RFK Jr. on. That's more of his flavor, right? Someone who's a bit libertarian leaning, someone who's critical of the establishment. Donald Trump, I think, is a bit, clearly not someone Joe Rogan sees himself aligned with politically, but also if he had him on and held his feet to the fire, his entire base and him could just really just be mad at Joe Rogan. He could say, don't listen to the podcast anymore. That's probably a business decision, right? To not have him on and be mean.
And he can do whatever he wants. I would, if you've had on, when you're starting to have on candidates, I think it's only fair. Again, he can do, it's his show, so I'm not telling him how to run it.
Right.
If you're having candidates on, to be fair, you should probably invite them all, or at least all the significant ones on. We've
at
had
the same time.
to say we've had RFK Jr. and Marianne on the show, Marianne Williamson. If President Biden wanted to be on the show, we would of course do it. If President Trump wanted to be on the show, we've had Vivek Ramaswamy from the Republican category. Right. We're certainly interested in having on more of the Republican candidates. To be fair to everyone, to ask them questions and let the audience decide who they like. They probably already have some inclination of who they like, but they always want to learn more information. So I think that's our approach. But again, it's his show. He can do whatever he wants. Doesn't want to talk to Trump. Doesn't have to talk to Trump. Trump has every opportunity to speak and to be heard, and everything he does makes news and everyone covers it. So it's not like Trump is being silenced because he hasn't gotten his invitation to the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have just Joe Rogan host the presidential debates, and he could just do it podcast style in that same room. Be like, all right, what are your thoughts on aliens? Talk as long as you want. Really, we have all the time in the world.
Aliens and drug legalization. Yep. And
imagine
that's
if we had that for the Democratic presidential primary. Kamala Harris would be like, I was that little girl on that bus, and Rogan would be like, roll the clip, Jamie, and it's baby Kamala on the bus. I think Joe Rogan would do a fine job. And then DeSantis could also answer for his time at Gitmo.
We learned something about that finally. All right, we will have more Rising right after this.